Like every good job interview, monsters also need to make a good first impression on your players. I guess the question I have is, would your players hire them? One of the biggest challenges that I had as a dungeon master growing up, and even to this day, is how to introduce monsters to a player. Now, what I mean by that is, how do I make the monsters known to the players in an encounter? Back when I was younger, when I was playing D&D, I always just thought that monsters just kind of walked right up to the players. Hey, you see a couple goblins on the road. Hey, a dragon happens to be here, etc., etc. As I started developing my skills, I started to realize that there was a lot more creative ways to introduce monsters besides just rolling on a random table and saying, hey, you see this monster. But as I got older as well, I started trying to think of more creative ways to sort of channel that imagination. You see, when you look at movies and such, there's always that moment where the characters interact with that monster for the first time, and it's such an amazing moment that either whether it be a surprise encounter or there's that look of dread on the characters' faces.
Two.
Firstly, what about the ROUSs?
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
I try and capture that in my D&D games, and it's really challenging because players know a lot about these monsters, so it's really hard to actually surprise them, let alone with monsters that they know they can defeat or just monsters that don't pose much of a threat to them. So I'm going to show you how to infuse your games with a little bit more suspense, excitement, and it all revolves around how you introduce the monster. Come follow me. Now, the two questions that I always ask when creating encounters is, what are the monsters doing and why are they there? Just like in any good story, the world does go on around the players, and I think it's worthwhile to actually just take a moment and think about why the monsters are there in the first place. Are they setting an ambush? Are they actually actively patrolling the area? Is there a reason for them to be exactly where they are when the players encounter them? You can build outward from that. In actual fact, once you've established what they're doing there, you can sort of build some natural reactions or natural habits that they would have before the players actually interact with them. Don't always assume that the players are going to see the creatures first, and better yet, don't always assume that the players are actually going to see the creatures at all. Even if the creatures aren't planning an ambush, there's always that chance that they're going to hear, smell, or maybe even feel the creatures before they actually see them in their entirety. Do as much as you can to try and throw the players off balance and make each encounter unique. Now, this goes without saying, but it's something that I didn't really clue into until many years into my dungeon mastering career. So, actually describe the creatures before you actually name the creatures. See, when I first started out dungeon mastering, I just assumed that all players knew everything about all the monsters, and everything that was in the monster manual book, if I just referred to them by name, the players would just imagine what they were. But later on in my career, I started realizing that by describing the monsters first and allowing the players to try and figure out what the monsters were, added a certain level of mystery. Even to this day, things that are quite common like goblins, orcs, or mundane creatures, I still take a moment to describe them as opposed to just naming them up front. Now, I know a lot of dungeon masters are probably saying, well, Dwayne, I do this all the time, so why is this a point? It's worth mentioning that how you describe that monster right at the beginning when they first meet them is forming that first impression, and it can also just galvanize the imagination and make them actually worry, have fear, all the different emotions that they might have. It's when you name the creature that it takes away some of the mystery and some of that fear that might go into encountering the creature. Dress the monsters up how you want the players to react to them. Whether that be a common creature that everybody knows the look of, give it a different spin, change the skin color, give them different equipment, have them look a little bit different, describe them differently. You never know. Just having a little bit of difference in that monster might be enough to get that player a little worried and evoke an emotional response. There's no harm in getting feedback from your players in a game of Dungeons & Dragons. Being a good dungeon master means getting a good feedback loop from your players, what they like and what they didn't like. The next time you introduce a monster, ask the players how they felt. Ask them if there was a sense of mystery, excitement, in general, how they felt about the monster making an appearance. Take that information and blend it into your next encounter. Hope you've gotten some ideas on how to jazz up your encounters with your monsters, maybe throw and subvert the expectations of your players. I hope you're all having fun playing Dungeons & Dragons out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Before you go, I need your help. I'm trying to grow the exposure of what we do here at Maverick Games. My goal is to actually bring information to parents and students for fun, academics, and even support of neurodivergency. Please subscribe and make sure you click on those notifications. I don't do paid ads or sponsorships. I hope that you can find content here that's enjoyable for yourself and maybe others. Thank you very much, and thanks for tuning in.